Have you ever stood at the edge of something new in your life and just felt that pit in your stomach that says, what if I fail? What if I mess this all up? What if I can't come back from it? Well, I want to tell you, you're not alone. In fact, you're in good company because every one of us wrestles with fear when it comes to taking a step of faith into the unknown. Welcome to Pure Heart Church's online campus. We're so glad that you're here with us today. And if you're new, we want to connect with you. Just head on over to pureheart.org/connect so that we can get to know you and we can help to give you your next step. But let's return back to that place, that moment when we're standing on the edge, staring into the unknown. We've all been there, right? Facing a leap that could lead to new possibilities or possibly end in regret. Maybe for you, it might be a career change that you've been putting off, a conversation you've been avoiding, a dream you buried years ago that just won't stay buried. Or maybe it's something more spiritual. Maybe you've heard about Jesus, but you've never really trusted him with your story. So you wait, you hesitate, because what if it doesn't work out? But here's the twist. What if the greater risk is never taking the step at all? Today's message is all about that moment, the moment where faith gets real. Not because all the answers are clear, but because God is. Today, we're diving into what it really means to take a risk, to walk in obedience to God. How that kind of bold trust can turn our faith into a real adventure. It might be to just reframe how you think about fear, failure, and what it means to follow Jesus. No matter where you are in your faith journey, whether this is all brand new or you've been walking with Jesus for years, this message is for you. Welcome to church.
Thousand generations falling down in worship to sing the song of ages to the Lamb. All who've gone before us and all who will believe will sing the song of ages to the Lamb. Your name is the highest, your name is the greatest, your name stands above them all. All thrones and dominions, all powers and positions, your name, oh, it stands above them all. And the angels cry, Christ, holy, you are lifted high, holy, holy forever. And if you've been forgiven, if you've been redeemed, we'll sing the song forever to the Lamb. Yes, you will. And if you walk in freedom, and if you bear his name, we'll sing the song forever to the Lamb. Oh, we'll sing the song forever and amen. And the angels cry, holy, all creation cries, holy, you are lifted high, holy, holy forever. Hear your people sing, hear your people sing. great is your name. Oh, it stands above them all, yes it does. All thrones and dominions, all powers and positions, your name, oh, it stands above them all. 'Cause your name is the highest, your name is the greatest, your name, oh, it stands above them all. All thrones and dominions, all powers and positions, your name, it stands above them all. And the angels cry, holy, all creation cries, holy, you are lifted high, holy, holy forever. Hear your people sing now, hear your people sing, holy to the King of Kings, holy, you will always be, holy, holy forever. You will always be holy, holy forever. You will always be holy, holy forever.
So years ago, and I'm going to say end of last century because that makes me sound like I'm really old and a time traveler. But end of the last century, I found myself standing alone on this old wooden dock. It was stretched out into a glassy little lake somewhere in the middle of nowhere. Well, I was in East Texas, but it was January. It was cold, and the night was completely still. Now, they say everything's bigger in Texas, and it turns out that includes the sky. It felt massive, like it could just swallow you whole. And I just stood there, staring. And then came the sigh. And if you're like me, you know what that means. It's the kind that starts deep in your chest and it pours out of your whole body. It's a sigh that carries thoughts that are just, they're too tangled for words. That sigh was me standing at the edge of something new. You see, I had just graduated high school. Scholarships were lined up. I had been granted a full ride. It was a safe path. It was actually the responsible path. But instead, I made a different choice. I ended up jumping into a van full of strangers from Youth of the Mission, YWAM, for those of you that are familiar, from Tyler, Texas, and spent the next 3 months on the road, speaking, serving, traveling up the west coast of the US, and then halfway across Canada. It was completely unexpected. Some might actually say irresponsible, like my parents maybe. I gave up free college for ministry, and I even spent what little money I had just for the chance to do it. And now here I was back, about to start their discipleship training school, a whole new season. It was unknown, it was exciting, and if I'm honest, a little terrifying. So there I was on that dock at midnight, just soaking it all in, talking to God, trying to breathe. And then suddenly I heard a voice from behind me say, you know, ain't nobody got nothing on that sky. I jumped out of my skin because I thought I was completely alone. I turned around and I saw a guy walking toward me. He was dressed head to toe like he would call himself later like a gas station cowboy. Trucker cap, overalls, work boots, heavy southern drawl. He introduced himself. His name was Jason. And he was also starting the discipleship program that I was jumping into. We ended up standing there for hours on that dock, telling stories, laughing about life, talking theology, dreaming about the future. I love that his faith was new. It was raw. It was electric. And at one point he said, I just want to see the kind of stuff the guys in the Bible saw. Do what they did, And I nodded. I knew exactly what he meant. But he went on. He said, I want to be that kind of person. The kind that does whatever God asks, goes wherever he leads, ain't scared. One of the guys is full of faith, the kind that gets out of the boat and walks on water. And that was contagious. I'm like, yeah, me too. And Jason lit up and he said, we got to jump, man. Take the step. And I was like, absolutely. And then he said, let's go right now. And I said, let's get, wait, what? Jason actually wanted us to literally step off the dock right then into the lake in January at 3 a.m. Now, I like to think of myself as a risk taker, but this was a bit of a stretch. Because did I mention it was freezing? What's surprising is that it's amazing how much of a theology expert you can become when you don't want to do something. My brain was rolling. I started rattling off reasons why this absolutely wasn't necessary. I said things like, man looks at the outside, God really looks at the heart. Things like, there's a difference between faith and foolishness. Jason, even in the Bible, this happened like once. Even throughout we really shouldn't test God. I was going so far into, in the original Greek, I think it actually says, but then I got practical, appealing to the realism of the moment. First off, for those of you who grew up in the 80s, I'm standing on a dock in a lake in the middle of nowhere with a guy named Jason. That's not starting off well. But then I jumped into other things. Hey, Jason, I have a small fear of this thing called drowning. And on top of that, hypothermia. I'm not a fan. There might be eels. By the way, it's really dark. And if you hadn't realized, it's 1995. Our cell phones aren't built for this yet. More importantly, no one will hear our screams. Oh, by the way, did I mention eels? But none of that seemed to affect Jason. He just smiled and said, what's the worst that could happen? Literally everything I just said. For some reason, he hadn't heard the part about eels. I don't know if I was stuttering, but here's what I found out. He wasn't being reckless. Jason wasn't trying to prove something. He knew God wasn't commanding him to walk on water. And what he said next stuck with me. He said, I know God doesn't have to let me walk on water, but I never want to miss out because I didn't ask. Or worse, because I didn't try. What if the reason I don't see this kind of stuff is because I'm not even looking for it? And that hit me because I knew exactly what he meant. Dale Carnegie once said, inaction breeds doubt and fear. Action breeds confidence and courage. And I believe that's true spiritually too. You see, faith isn't about having all the answers. It's about taking that next step. Because life was never intended to be about comfort. It's supposed to be about transformation. God calls us into a life that's full of purpose, full of impact, full of his presence. But we'll never experience that fullness if we're still clinging to what's safe and predictable. So maybe the question isn't, what will happen if I step out? Maybe the better question is, what might I miss if I don't? So, at 3 a.m., under that wild, endless Texas sky, Jason and I looked at each other, we counted the 3, and stepped off the dock. Now, don't worry, we'll come back to that story. But if you grew up around church or have read the Bible, you've probably heard of a guy named Jonathan. He was the son of King Saul. He was also best friends with David, who just happened to be next in line for the throne, which that's awkward all the way around. You want to talk about messy holidays or even hanging out on the weekend. It was a little messy. Jonathan was caught between the current king, his dad, and the future one, his best friend. But what defined his story didn't have anything to do about politics. It was actually about faith. You see, because of Jonathan's life and his position, he saw firsthand who God was, what he was capable of, and what could happen when someone stepped out in radical trust. And that exposure, it shaped the kind of risks that he was willing to take. One of the wildest examples of this is 1 Samuel 14. And I'll just kind of paraphrase, tell you the story. You see, Israel is locked in battle with the Philistines, which seems to happen a lot in the Old Testament. Tensions are high, and out of nowhere, Jonathan, he turns to his armor bearer and says, hey, let's go over to the Philistine outpost. You see, there's actually no mention of like a strategy meeting up to this point, or he hadn't come out of a prayer circle and said this. He hadn't checked in with his dad, the king. He just said, hey, let's go. And so off they go, just the two of them, down this rocky ravine between the cliffs named, I'm going to butcher these names, Bozez and Sineh, which are probably Hebrew for sketchy and slippery. But the point is, Jonathan drops this gem next. He looks at his armor bearer and he said, let's go across to the outposts of those pagans. And catch this word, perhaps the Lord will help us. For nothing can hinder the Lord. He can win a battle whether he has many warriors or only a few. That word I wanted you to look at is perhaps. That's a crazy word. That's it. No angel of the Lord appeared. There was no voice from heaven. There's no mention of a prophet coming and saying, hey, why don't you do this? There wasn't a burning bush. There's no Google Maps to help. There's not a fleece like Gideon. Just maybe, perhaps. And what I love is his armor bearer, shout out to this guy, by the way, just says, do whatever you think is best. I'm with you, heart and soul. Now that's a ride or die friend. Some of us can't talk our friends into stopping at Starbucks. It's out of the way. There's 5 on every corner. But now here's this guy. Jonathan might as well say, hey, you want to go dodge traffic? And bro's all, yeah, I'm in. Want to play catch with lawn darts? Sounds good. Base jump off a high rise? Hey, let me grab my chute. Can I just say we all need a friend like that? And by the way, I'm not him. So Jonathan goes on to say, we'll let them see us, talking about the Philistines. And if they say, stay where you are, we stop. But if they say, come on up, we'll go. Because we're going to let that be the sign that God is with us. So they do just that. The Philistines see them and say, come on up here and we'll teach you a lesson. And Jonathan's like, perfect, that's our sign. Sign? Remember, this was a perhaps, this was a maybe. If he's wrong, they die. Sure, makes sense. So they climb up, hands over feet, and what happens next is absolute chaos for the Philistines. See, Jonathan and his armor bearer take on 20 soldiers and absolutely beat the snot out of them. But then something even crazier happens. The passage says, suddenly, panic broke out in the Philistine army, and just then, an earthquake struck, and everyone was terrified. Did you get that? The earth moved. The world shook. But here's the part that messes with me. Would the earth have moved if Jonathan hadn't? You see, there's no guarantee, there's no divine confirmation in this story, no audible voice, just faith built on character and memory. Jonathan knew who God was. He also knew what God could do. He knew who the Philistines were and that they stood against God's purposes. So he asked the only question that really mattered. Why not? But I want you to get this. Jonathan wasn't promised a miracle, and he wasn't waiting for proof. Jonathan took steps on a perhaps, because even if he lost, he knew that God would still be God. And maybe that's the kind of risk that we're called to take too. But if we're painfully honest, we don't love the uncertainty of perhaps. We want a confirmation. We want a voice from heaven. We want a contract. We want God saying, this is the way, walk in it. Also, here's the exact timeline, here's your budget, and we did a healthy risk assessment. But instead, Jonathan acted on a nudge, a conviction. What if we acted on open doors and gut checks? But maybe that's the point. Maybe the reason we don't feel the ground shake in our lives is because we've been too afraid to move first. Maybe we're waiting on God to do something miraculous while he's waiting on us to take a step without the guarantee. Maybe we keep shaking with fear, and that's exactly why the world around us never does. Listen, I get it. It's much easier to play it safe. We sometimes even spiritualize indecision. We call inaction wisdom. But sometimes the most dangerous thing we can do is nothing. Because playing it safe has a cost too. We've been conditioned to think that if we risk and fail, then we did something wrong. But that kind of thinking only makes us shrink back. And the truth is, I believe we have a very warped sense of failure. There's a lot that gets in the way of taking bold steps. And a lot of the times it's the weight of fear. Sometimes it's comfort, but often it's our definition of failure. We take a leap of faith, maybe to start something new, take a job, move to a new city. And when it doesn't go the way we hoped, we start second guessing everything. Did I hear God wrong? Was that really faith or just a bad idea? If this was the right step, shouldn't it have worked out better? We've seen this 100 times. If a church startup doesn't become a mega church, we assume God must not have been in it. If a job ends or a relationship closes, a dream falls apart, we conclude we must have absolutely taken the wrong path. But what if that's not exactly how God sees it? What if the outcome doesn't invalidate the step? What if success in the kingdom has less to do with how things end and more to do with the fact that you moved at all? Take Paul, for example. He was an apostle, missionary, theologian, also beaten, imprisoned, shipwrecked, and eventually executed. By worldly standards, that's a career path that you'd probably just move past on LinkedIn. You see, in fact, in Acts 21, the church in Caesarea pleads with him to not go to Jerusalem because they believe it's a death sentence, which it eventually ends up being. Now, I've been around churches long enough to know that there were probably people back at the church of Caesarea who, when they heard about Paul's eventual execution, went, "Man, we tried to tell him. Talk about a waste. That guy, he had so much potential, but he just missed God on that one." But we know this, Paul's legacy wasn't built on comfort or clean outcomes. It was built on faithful steps. He didn't need guarantees. What he needed was conviction. And because of that, we're still talking about his letters 2,000 years later. You see, Paul's story reminds us the right steps don't always look like you're winning. Sometimes it looks like worshiping in chains. Sometimes it looks like standing tall when the outcome around you is crumbling. Sometimes it's standing in front of the furnace and stepping in regardless of the outcome. So like I said, maybe the question isn't, will this work? Maybe the better question is, will this grow God's kingdom? Because I think our job isn't to predict the result. Our job is to take a step. What if we stop seeing a failed outcome as a sign that we made the wrong decision? What if we start seeing it as part of the journey of being led by a living God? Because even a failure can plant seeds. Even a closed door can open hearts. Even a detour can carry destiny. Paul actually impacted more lives on his route to execution than he had before. It all depends on what lens we're using and if we're truly following the heart of God. My friend Aaron, he's a prolific songwriter. He's not just good, he has a wall just littered with gold records. It's a little annoying. Top 10 singles, more accolades than I can even say. I've had the tremendous opportunity to teach songwriting courses with him, and he always shares this statement. You have to write 99 bad songs to have a shot at writing a good one. And if you aren't willing to write a bad song, then you've written off any chance to ever write a good one. But we tend to see risk as threatening, unstable, dangerous. But in the kingdom of God, risk is actually holy ground. It's not a gamble, it's more of a gateway, a chance for us to partner with the Creator in something bigger than our plans. And when we stop seeing ourselves as small, as incapable, and start seeing God as limitless and faithful, that changes everything. Because that's where the adventure begins. The adventure of faith isn't about calculating odds, it's about cultivating trust. It's freedom to dream, to build, to imagine, and explore. And not because outcomes are guaranteed, but because our future is already secure. Imagine redefining success as something as simple as knowing God and walking accordingly. What if the real win was simply taking the step because he called us to build his kingdom? Because he has invited us to dream with him. And because he is able to do even more than whatever we could ever dream of. In fact, Ephesians 3:20 says this, "Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine according to his power that is at work within us." Let that sink in. The fact that God can do immeasurably more, not just than what we can accomplish, but even more than we ask or even imagine, anything we could ever dream up. But here's the truth. We often struggle to ask big because we're afraid to be disappointed. We tend to hesitate to imagine because we're afraid of being wrong. But what if that hesitation is actually holding us back from seeing what could be? What if all these kingdom possibilities around us are just waiting for someone brave enough to say, I don't know how this ends, but I trust the one who does. So take the risk. Build the thing, write the song, start the conversation, say the yes. Because when we dare to move, even if we don't get the result we expect, we just might stumble into something deeper, richer, more beautiful than we ever imagined. Not because we were certain, but because we were willing. It was 3:30 in the morning after stepping off the dock that night. And Jason and I sat side by side on a wooden bench in the campus laundromat. We were barefoot, wrapped in towels, shivering, and honestly exhausted. I still remember our soaked clothes thumping rhythmically in the dryer in front of us, and it was a slow soundtrack to what had just happened. We were two young guys in the heart of East Texas, completely drenched, absolutely freezing, and grinning like fools. And you know what? We weren't sitting there debating where we'd gone wrong. We weren't asking why God didn't part the lake or lift us up with angel wings. We weren't disappointed that we sank. There wasn't any shame, no finger pointing, no regret. Just this incredible sense of freedom. We had stepped out. We had tried. And that was the win. Because sometimes the miracle isn't in walking on water. It's in having the courage to actually leave the dock. It's in realizing that in itself is enough. But even that requires a huge step of surrendering our sense of control, because you and I, we like to believe that the buck stops with us and that we're the makers of our own destinies. You've probably heard that said before. When the truth is, we're simply the takers of our own next steps. And those steps can be paralyzing if we haven't surrendered to the fact that the kingdom of God eclipses what we think we control. See, success and positive outcomes were never part of the equation, but abundant life is. And we have to grasp that those are not the same thing. The abundance comes from what you're chasing. And are we chasing successful ventures, or are we chasing God, regardless of our personal status or even reward? For Jason and I, that night on the dock, we weren't chasing a spectacle. We were chasing a God big enough to be trusted in the unknown. And that moment, that soggy, sacred, late night moment, taught me something that I've never forgotten. And it's this: the greatest freedom in life doesn't come from playing it safe. It comes from knowing who God is and saying yes to opportunities that align with his mission, no matter the results. And maybe that's where you are right now, standing on your own kind of dock, looking out into the unknown. You're weighing the risks. You're wrestling with the fear. And maybe you've never taken that step before. Maybe you've heard about faith, about Jesus, about forgiveness and purpose, but you never actually moved toward him. Today, maybe the step God is inviting you to take is the first one, the biggest one, the one that changes everything. It's a step of faith to trust Jesus with your life, to stop waiting for perfect conditions, to stop needing all the answers, to stop carrying shame or even fear or the pressure to have it all together. Because the truth is this: Jesus already stepped toward you. He stepped out of heaven. He stepped into our brokenness. He walked to the cross and he took the weight of sin, failure, fear, and death, all of it. And he rose again, offering new life, forever life for anyone who says yes. You don't have to earn it. You don't have to figure it all out first. You don't have to clean yourself up. You just have to step. So if you're ready, maybe ready to stop playing it safe, ready to walk into the fullness of who God created you to be, ready to trust him with your story, then this is your moment. Take the step. Say yes to Jesus. Not because you have every answer, but because you've seen enough to know he's worth trusting with what's next. Maybe this is the moment where your earth starts to shake. And if that's you, if you're ready to begin a relationship with Jesus, you can start right here, right now, with a simple prayer. And there's nothing magical about these words, but if they reflect the posture of your heart, then God hears them. If that's you, would you pray with me? Jesus, I need you. I believe you love me. I believe you died for me and that you rose again. Today, I am stepping toward you. Forgive me of my sins. Fill me with your spirit. Lead me into the life you've created me for. I give you everything, my past, my present, my future. From this day on, I'm yours. In Jesus' name, amen. If you prayed that prayer, that was a step. And I need you to know this, you didn't take it alone. You've just stepped into the greatest adventure of your life, not because everything will be easy, but because now you never walk alone. So wherever you are, in a church building, watching from home, or even if you're listening in your car, I need you to remember this. You don't have to have a voice from heaven to say, this is your moment. I can tell you it right now. This is your moment. Take the step and just watch what God does next. If you said yes to Jesus today, let us know in the comments, and Pastor Matt will make sure we have the opportunity to walk alongside you. And if God is prompting you to support the mission of Pure Heart Church, step up and use the QR code that's shown on the screen, or head over to pureheart.org/give. We are so grateful for you, and we believe God is going to continue to do amazing things in your life.
Wasn't that a powerful reminder today that our faith, it's not about playing it safe. It's about actually taking that next step, even though it goes against human nature sometimes, when the outcome's uncertain. And maybe for you today, that first step that you took was actually, for the first time, making a decision to follow Jesus. We would love to celebrate that with you. That's the beginning of the greatest journey of your life, and you're not meant to walk it alone. So do us a favor, head on over to pureheart.org/handraise. Let us know that you said yes. One of our team members would love to connect with you to help you take those next steps. Now for the rest of us, maybe today was a little bit of a wake-up call, a moment of clarity, we could say. And we realized that we've been stuck. We've been playing it safe, and God's been calling me and you to something actually more. Kind of it's time to get out of the boat, to move before the miracle, to step, even if all we've got is a perhaps. That's where you're at. I want you to check out Pastor Heath's new book, Unimaginable. That's the name of it, Unimaginable. Today's message was just a glimpse of some of the bigger themes that he unpacks, and that's living with bold creativity. Let's have a spirit-led life, a purpose that pushes us to dream bigger, lead bolder, live with eternal impact. We weren't made to manage the status quo. That's not what God wants for us. We were made to disrupt it and dream with a God who does immeasurably more. So let's not just read those stories in the Bible and go like, oh, it's amazing what God did with those people. What if he's wanting us to be that story? What stories he want to tell through your life if you're willing to step out? So if that stirs something in you, go and grab that book on Amazon. Just search Unimaginable by Heath Michael Bottomley. And speaking of dreaming big and stepping out, check out one of the incredible ways God's using our church to make a real impact this school year. And that's through our classroom care kits. We get to serve teachers and thousands of students across our community because faith isn't just about what we believe, it's about what we build together and walk out. So check this out.
So we often ask the question, if Pure Heart Church were gone tomorrow, would we be missed? Well, a few weeks ago, we launched our back to school drive for classroom care kits. And Pure Heart, you showed up in a big, big way. Our goal was simple but powerful: to bless teachers in our partnering schools by filling canvas tote bags with classroom essentials, showing them that they're seen, valued, and not alone as they step into another school year. And because of your amazing generosity, we were able to pack 473 of these classroom care kits. These kits were delivered to 7 of our local partnering schools, 2 schools up on the Navajo Nation Indian Reservation, and 1 school for at-risk children in Mexico. On top of that, we were able to provide additional supplies to children in need through our LifeBridge Resource Center here on our Glendale campus. Altogether, your generosity has impacted almost 12,000 children. And it wasn't just about the supplies. Many of you took the time to write personal notes of encouragement, words that will help carry these teachers through some of the hardest days in the upcoming school year. This, my friend, is what it looks like to be the church. This is what it means to love beyond our walls. Together, we're making a tangible difference in our community. Thank you, Pure Heart family.
I love that. It's not just amazing to see how God's using our church to make a real difference through something like the Classroom Care Kit Drive, blessing teachers and students as they head into a new year, but it's the ripple effect, right? You throw a rock into a pond and a ripple happens. And that's what the part that gets me is because over the years, I've heard stories from people who have ended up at Pure Heart or in the community. They had little to no faith, but when they saw a church like Pure Heart step in with a no strings attached love and come to love and serve them, they go, why would they do that? It doesn't make sense. They're not getting anything out of this. But sometimes that was the moment of that first step, that beginning of a journey that eventually led those people to Christ. See, our part is to walk in the obedience, even when it's outside of our comfort zone, because God's moving in ways we don't always see. But here's the thing. We know He's always working. If you want to be a part of what God's doing, whether that's locally, like supporting things like classroom care kits, or globally through our online campus that's reaching people all over the world in different countries, we invite you to give at pureheart.org/give, or you could give in the Pure Heart app. Thank you so much for your generosity. When you give, you're not just donating, you're joining a movement, you're impacting lives with that love of Christ. And also, speaking of that Pure Heart app, if you haven't downloaded or updated our newly refreshed app, it is now time, because you got to head to that app store, make sure you got the latest version, because we just launched a new release and you don't want to miss anything. And if you found value in today's message, would you just be so kind as to like it and share it? It helps us reach more and more people with hope, and you never know who in your world needs that encouragement today. And finally, just drop a comment. And here's the reason why. Let us know, how is God calling you to step out of your comfort zone and into His better story? And here's the reason why, is it's easy to be like, I need to go do that. But when we put it into words, it kind of commits us, right? We love you. We're praying for you as you begin to step into that unimaginable story that God has for you. And we'll see you right back here next week.